We are the education and training working group of the Jewish Youth Climate Movement. My name is Michelle. I am in 12th grade and I'm from New York or Lenape land.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm also a senior in high school, and I'm from Stamford, Connecticut, and reside on Wappinger Native Land.
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm from Sacramento, California, which is Miwok and Nisenan land, and I'm in 10th grade.
Hi, I'm Hallel. I am also in 12th grade, and I'm from New York, which is on Muncie Lenape land.
JYCM, a program in Guatemala, was founded in 2019 as the only national Gen Z-led organizing movement dedicated to combating climate change and environmental injustice from a Jewish lens. We started this podcast as a part of a larger guide to navigating the complexities of the climate crisis. In this podcast, we plan to tackle hard-hitting questions about the climate crisis as we engage in dynamic conversations and highlight different affiliates of JYCM as we discuss the intersection of Judaism and environmental justice. We hope that this podcast can serve as an engaging medium for us to foreground aspects of the climate crisis that are often left out of climate conversations. In our first episode of the podcast, we will be talking about the minor Jewish holiday of Lag BaOmer. And so now I'm going to pass it over to Izzy, who is going to explain a little bit about some context for Lag BaOmer.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michelle, so much. So let's talk about what exactly is Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is a minor Jewish holiday celebrated on the 18th of Iyar, which is a Hebrew month, but also the 33rd day of counting the Omer. Okay, so let's break down the name. The name Lag breaks up into the Hebrew letters Lamed and Gimel to indicate 33. And BaOmer is a bet and the word Omer, which just means of the Omer. So what is the Omer? The Omer is a 49-day counting period that begins on the second day of Passover and concludes on the day before Shavuot. But the 18th of Iyar is a pretty interesting day in Jewish history. But why, might you ask? Because of two rabbis, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a rabbi who lived in the 2nd century CE and taught publicly Torah mysticism that we all know as Kabbalah. If you've ever heard of the book The Zohar, he's the author. He was the first to teach this and is still known as one of the most renowned Jewish scholars in history. Coincidentally, he died on the 18th of Iyar, Lag BaOmer. But wait, if he died, why would we celebrate Lag BaOmer? Why would we celebrate this day? Many Jewish teachers actually believe that the day you died is the most righteous day of your life, the day you achieve perfection and actually head to heaven. We then celebrate Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's life and accomplishments on his death day, which we also know in Hebrew as a yard site. We do that by having bonfires, and many even go and visit his gravesite in Meron. But wait, I also mentioned Rabbi Akiva. What's the significance of that? Rabbi Akiva was actually Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's teacher, and historically, many of Rabbi Akiva's students died over the Omer period between Passover and Shavuot. But these students did not die for no reason. They were not kind to each other, and many of them died of plague and disease. Yet, miraculously, on Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, the deaths ceased. Kaput! It was a true miracle. So then we celebrate Lag BaOmer for these two reasons: Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's death, but also the miracle of Rabbi Akiva's students no longer dying. This then highlights that Lag BaOmer is both a spiritual holiday to highlight our connection to Jewish teachings, but also a holiday that commemorates loving and respecting one's fellow. For the first 32 days of the Omer, nobody listens to live music, nobody cuts their hair, and we mourn for the deaths of these students. It's really sad. But once it hits the 33rd day of the Omer, we get lit and we celebrate with big bonfires and loud music. And now I'm going to pass it off to Max to talk about some connections between the climate crisis and Lag BaOmer.
As we approach this special day, we have prepared a segment which draws connections between the significance of Lag BaOmer as a Jewish holiday and how the values and traditions associated with the holiday relate to our work in fighting for climate justice. As Izzy may have already pointed out, Lag BaOmer is viewed in the Jewish community as a day of spiritual cleansing. Others attribute this holiday to commemorate the resilience of the Jewish spirit. In that sense, it would not be wrong to say that climate activism and Lag BaOmer have more in common than one may think. The biggest connection that comes to mind is the continuous hope for a future in which climate change does not pose a grave threat to our society. In recent years, climate change has had a significant impact on our view of Lag BaOmer. As there are many customs relating to fire on Lag BaOmer, such as lighting bonfires, the symbolic holiday can be seen as an opportunity to acknowledge the growing risk of various issues concerning climate change, such as wildfires in areas with temperatures rising far beyond the norm due to global warming. Also, as a holiday deeply rooted in ancient agricultural traditions, the increase in extreme weather patterns around the world often disrupts our ability to operate farms and produce stable crops, an issue plaguing farms worldwide. Thus, Lag BaOmer serves as an opportune occasion to reflect on the urgent need for environmental awareness and steadfast efforts to address the challenges posed by climate change.
Okay, hi everyone. Now we're going to go into questions and open conversation discussing the intersection between the climate crisis and Lag BaOmer. So, first order of business. After Passover, the Amidah, which is a core tenet of Jewish prayer, changes to reflect requests for rain. How do we approach this season with perspective? How can we make not only our liturgy, but our actions more conscious?
I mean, it's definitely an interesting point about the prayers for rain, right? It shifts our narrative, and it also has a deeper connection when we think about the holiday of Passover and the holiday of Shavuot, right? These two holidays have to do with also harvest seasons, right? We're transitioning and we're aligning our holidays also with environmental stewardship and the way we think of the land. I think to connect both our liturgy and our actions to be more conscious, it's really important for us, to reflect on our actions and consider how they impact both our community and the environment around us. So I think for me, one way to make our actions more conscious is both trying to incorporate sustainability, but also learning more texts that connect the two, like Judaism and environmentalism. Like maybe I'll read a little bit more into about the Amidah.
Great, thank you so much, Izzy. Anyone else? Michelle?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I also think that thinking about like the harvest, as Izzy was saying, and kind of those natural ecological events that such as rain that are essential to the harvest, like this is kind of serves as a time to reflect and consider those natural ecological um processes that are jeopardized by the climate crisis and exacerbated by the climate crisis. So it's just a time as well to reflect on our relationship with our land.
Great, thank you so much. I think for the sake of time, we'll maybe limit it to 2 answers per question, but yeah, great. Okay, next one. Fire typically represents rebirth, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, the light of a new day, like Shabbat candles. How can we treat this holiday, which comes sandwiched in between major Jewish holidays and milestones, as a point of reflection and intention shifting? Furthermore, what does it mean to have this duality between lighting bonfires and planting trees to commemorate the same holiday, something that can be so destructive, but also bringing of new light and life?
Again, going, I think, to the role that wildfires have like an essential role in our ecosystem as well, because they help to cleanse organic matter. So in fact, it is an old farming technique to set fire to the land at the end of a season in order to help prepare the soil for the next year. And so we can kind of think of the same can apply for Lag BaOmer, as this can kind of like represent a resetting period in our calendar.
I also think that it can kind of be about like intention shifting, and by planting a tree or lighting a fire, you're reflecting a different energy or positivity out of like, because in Lag BaOmer, we spend a lot of time reflecting. And I think that the lighting of a bonfire or planting the trees can kind of, you're putting out different energy that you might be reflecting about.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, moving forward. Lag BaOmer is meant to be a happy occasion, despite all of the deaths that surround it. How do we find meaning amidst pervasive climate grief and an unstable future? And I think we can open this question up to everyone.
I guess I can start with an answer on this question because definitely like researching this is a very sad idea that we're going from such like a tense moment in Jewish history to such like a supposed to be happy one, like an occasion. And I think it's almost the same the way we feel with climate grief, right? Like it's very important for us to take this moment and acknowledge and validate our feelings. We can't sandwich them away. And instead, I think it's very important for us to draw strength from our traditions and community during times, of adversity, right? Like when we come together on Lag BaOmer, we come together as a community. In that same sense, with climate activism and climate grief, we need to come together as a community, right? To advocate for environmental justice, to really feel our feels, but also have our celebrations with purpose by committing to positive change with one another's.
Yeah, like Izzy said, I feel like it can be about having moments to honor emotions, positive and negative, and surrounding yourself with people that you feel like you can express your grief with, while also, of course, participating in the more positive aspects of tradition as well.
Yeah, I also think that there can be a lot of we see in the media definitely like there's in like a big like doomsday kind of perspective on climate on the climate crisis, and um so it's kind of it can be very intimidating. So I think just kind of like also thinking about like what can the individual really like what can the individual like do, and kind of just thinking about grief like kind of knowing that like there is no such thing as like a kind of perfect climate activist. um so like kind of just trying to do those tangible actions that you can as well.
Absolutely. And there's no such thing as the perfect Jew either. And I think that really goes hand in hand of we are doing the best that we can to live our lives with meaning, imbued with purpose, and doing everything that we can, and also knowing that like another big part of Judaism is rest, and that we don't have to be working all the time, and that we're doing our best, and that the most important thing is to not burn ourselves out. Okay. Thank you everyone for sharing. It's always an honor learning from and with you. Now gonna pass it on to Ellah for the end.
Thank you, Hallel. We've covered a lot this podcast, stretching from what Lag BaOmer is and what it means symbolically, but what it also means in relation to us as Jewish climate activists, and how we can stay connected to tradition through a time of turbulence and grief in our world. So, how do we adapt and inhibit ritual practices and observances to be climate forward while still making meaning in our work and tradition? With this question, it's important to remember that, like we were speaking about earlier, there is no perfect climate activist, and we do what we can, and everything is amazing and appreciated. So, how can we do this for Lag BaOmer? Maybe this means partaking in tradition of burning various items in a bonfire, but doing so at a smaller and less harmful scale, like using oil lamps. With all of this, we recognize that Lag BaOmer calls us to action as well through reflection and spiritual cleansing, framing to provide for the rest of the counting of the Omer. On this note, thank you for tuning in and listening to the Jewish Youth Climate Movement and our take on just one of the complexities of Judaism and environmental justice.